Hello and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about episode 3 of The Last of Us. Now a little bit different, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the characters in this episode and also what I thought about this show so far. Now we start off with Joel and Ellie and they're outside. Ellie starts to or tries to talk to Joel, is sorry for what's happened. And he really doesn't want to discuss this, so he just sort of closes off the subject. Joel is quite a closed person. He doesn't really talk or interact as well. And same for Ellie. I feel like she doesn't really talk as much, but when she does, she says what she feels. In the next 15 minutes, we get to see Joel and Ellie walking. They're on this journey. They're walking and talking at the same time. I feel like Ellie is asking loads more questions. She's obviously interacting with Joel or trying to interact with Joel more. We get to know a little bit more personal details about Ellie. So Ellie's never sat on a plane. This is probably because the virus all started way before she was born. And we established this also as she then asked Joel how all of this virus came about. And we get to see Joel explaining to her in detail. He's starting, like I said, to open up a little bit more and be more talkative. And she's kind of getting him to do that because she's asking more questions, she's asking more personal questions. So there is a lot more of how Ellie is behaving towards Joel and how he's responding and reacting to her. Joel is looking and feeling more relaxed. His body language shows that he's more open. He's kind of a little bit more himself. He seems like he's kind of comfortable with Ellie around. You get to see the change that's happening between Joel and Ellie. You can get to see how Joel is changing from what he was in the first and the second episode and how he is in this episode right here, right now with Ellie. And to me, that feels like there's a beginning of a relationship being built between the two because of their conversations that they're having, the more personal level they're getting to know each other. And then move on to a scene where Joel and Ellie are searching for supplies and to trying to get as much as they can to continue with the journey forth. And you can see that at one point that Ellie's very inquisitive. She's watching what Joel's doing, but then she's also wanders off on her own, goes down into the cellar, and she comes across a clicker that's kind of trapped. And this really intrigues Ellie. So you can see that this is really intrigued Ellie. She wants to go closer. You can see a little bit of fear in Ellie when she's walking closer, but then you can also see the curiosity, the way that she's kind of moving towards this clicker. She's nervous, but she still wants to go forward. She kind of takes the knife and scratches the clicker on the forehead, and suddenly you just see her stab this clicker. So you can see from here that Ellie is very brave. She's inquisitive, she's curious. So with Ellie, I'm getting to see a very young, mature girl here. You get to see her in a very vulnerable, very curious state, but then I get to see a very tough side of her. So it's interesting to watch her growing as the episodes are moving. I really like this scene where Ellie goes on to have a shower and then she says to Joel, "You really need to have a shower too." And he's like, he goes in to have a shower and comes back out and she's like, "Don't you look pretty?" It's kind of like a really humorous, very personal kind of banter. So this episode we get to meet Bill. Bill is played by Nick Offerman. So we know Bill from the game. So if you guys have watched the game, you'll probably know that Bill was actually in the game, and Joel and Bill know of each other, but they don't really actually like each other very much. From what I get to see of Bill, Bill's a really tough character. He's grumpy. He's quite humorous. He brings a little bit of comedy, a little bit of humor to the actual episode. We get to see him as being in a neighborhood on his own. He's the only survivor in this neighborhood of this cordyceps virus, and you see how he's actually built this kind of neighborhood. His house is full of ammunition. He's got all these videos like everywhere where he's like got connections to how he can see what's going on outside. So he's got these traps built for the clickers. He's very clever. He's just happily walking out, going collecting supplies, going to DIY centers, picking up things he needs to improve his house. It's kind of funny scene to watch in like such a apocalyptic drama where you'd have thought that there'd things out there for him to fight. And at this point I was expecting a little bit of action, so while he's going out and looking for these supplies, I thought he'd be fighting off some clickers and things like that, but we don't see any of that. We get to see the fact that he's got his own chickens, eggs, he's growing his own vegetables, so he's obviously a very intellectual guy. So I find Bill is a very practical, very grumpy, very humorous kind of funny guy. Really tell from how he is that he's a real survivor. He's a loner but a survivor. And then one day we get to see him venture out, and he comes across a guy called Frank who's trapped in like this kind of ditch. And he's a bit wary of him. You can tell that obviously he's not had an encounter with other people very often, and he's not trusting of Frank at all when he meets him. Surprisingly, Bill actually lets him come inside his house to see Bill making food, so we get him to see him making steak. And there's a point in the scene where Bill is actually playing the piano and Frank is behind him, and at this point I'm thinking, my heart is beating. I'm thinking, oh dude, you're trusting this guy so much, you've let him inside your house, and are you really thinking that he's behind him? So I'm thinking, is he going to get whacked over the head with something? Is something going to happen? But no, the story completely changes. We see a complete different character to Bill, a hardcore character from the video game, and then we get to see a very different side of Bill. We can tell that he's vulnerable, he's been alone for a long time, he doesn't really know how to interact with people, and he's not trusting of anyone at all. And then his character changes as he meets Frank. And then we go on to Joel and Ellie, them coming across to Bill's house, and here is where Ellie discovers the letter. The letter is actually from Bill, and here in the letter it kind of tells us a little bit about how Bill and Joel don't really get on with each other, but Bill's actually left him a key, and he's also said in the letter that if this letter is discovered, that he's dead. And this is a big game changer, because as far as the game, the Bill still is alive, and at this point I'm thinking, is he still alive? I mean, there's no bodies to be found, Joel doesn't check the room because he's been told not to check the room in the letter. It's quite a sad ending for Bill. We were expecting to see him come down and have a conversation with Ellie. That's what happens in the game. So there's a lot of differences between the episode and the actual game. I believe here that Joel is a little bit more protective because he doesn't let Ellie go into the room. He doesn't want to talk more about this. He just wants to go on and find the car and get out of this neighborhood, and that is exactly what they do. They go ahead, they find the car. The scene in the car shows how young Ellie is. She's in a bit of a daze when she gets into the car, a little bit excited, a little bit amused. He tells Ellie to put her seatbelt on, and here I can feel a little bit of a protective Joel. They're both beginning to build a bond, a relationship, a connection between the two that has a little bit of banter, a little bit of closeness. They're trying to open up to each other. Their body language shows, and his tone of voice towards her is different. So getting to see Joel in a different light, you're getting to see, is he gonna start building a relationship like he had with his daughter, or is he going to just, is he just protective towards her because she's with him on this journey? So we'll get to find out a little bit more about how their relationship and their bond is over the next few episodes. This was the ending of the episode where they kind of go off in the car. Now, I did feel a little bit disappointed with this episode. I was expecting a little bit more action from the clickers. So I'm looking forward to the next drama. Hope you guys are too. And if you enjoyed this video so far, do like and subscribe, and keep continuing to watch, and I shall see you guys in one of my next videos.